So thank you again, everyone, for being with us. If you were trying to get on the YouTube stream and couldn't and dialed in the bridge, it's because we're having an internet connection issue. The repairman or repair person will be out tomorrow to take a look at it. I am recording a videotape of the talk, and it will be edited and uploaded to the YouTube channel whenever the internet gets back to working again. So we do apologize for the difficulties. We'll just have to go back to doing things the old-fashioned way, over the telephone bridge. So we're grateful that everyone is here. And this morning I want to kind of give the summation of the ideas that have been coming to me up front, and then kind of work back into them into a little bit more detail. Now this is January, the third week in January, and every January what we do in the teaching in the organization of religious science, which is now Center for Spiritual Living, what we do is we go back to the basics. We go back to the first 4 chapters in the introduction to the textbook that was written by Ernest Holmes, and the title of the text is The Science of Mind. Those first 4 chapters, what they do is they kind of lay the foundation for the rest of that book. So the science of mind is the teaching, if you will. It's the curriculum. And Ernest was not the first to use that term. There are other teachers, metaphysical teachers at the time, who used it. In fact, if you listen to some of the talks by the Dalai Lama also talks about mind science and science of the mind. So this is not an idea that was unique to Ernest. And he says that. He says science of mind is not a unique revelation to any one person, but it is the culmination of all revelations. If we look back at all revelations, all philosophies, we find that silver thread that goes through them. So every January what we do in the organizations that teach science of mind is we go back to these 4 chapters, and we kind of review them and ask ourselves, is there anything different here than what you discovered last year and the year before and the year before that? You know, as we grow in our understanding, in our wisdom, in our understanding, as we grow in our experience of the divine, old things look new to us again. They look different to us. We find something that speaks to us in a way that is meaningful for us this year. And I've been doing this formally for about 25 years now. So formally for 25 years I've gone through these first 4 chapters of the textbook, and always something that was there before but didn't jump out at me, it just kind of comes and it just kind of jumps out. And it says, here I am, this is the important thing for you, Jim, this year. So that's what I want to kind of share today. The 3rd chapter of the introduction is called What It Does. What It Does. We started with the thing itself. The thing itself being that underlying energy, that substance that is behind the entire universe. It is that out of which everything that has been made has been made. It is God itself. And it is there. It is there and it is here. And in reality there is no here nor there. It just is. It is. In the Old Testament, the highest name for God was I am. And you might recall in Exodus when Moses receives the 10 Commandments, Moses says, who shall I say sent me? You know, who shall I say gave me these commandments? And the response is, I am. I am. Little interesting side note, I was going through some old notes that I have on Jewish mysticism, the Kabbalah, and looking at the letters in the Hebrew alphabet that are used to spell one of the names for God. One that we, in our culture, we kind of pronounce Yahweh or mispronounce Jehovah. Neither here nor there. The interesting thing is that the letters, if you look at the letters and the way that they're put together that spell that, The letters mean that which was, that which is, and that which always shall be. The I am. The I am. So the highest name for the divine is the I am, because anything else differentiates it. If we go back to that singularity of the physicists, the instant before the Big Bang, when everything was one, the I am. And before that, what then? And it is the thing itself, the undifferentiated stuff and substance of God. So there's this thing itself that underlies everything. It's called substance because it stands below, it supports everything. And it creates through a mental process. This is demonstrated to us or kind of explained to us in the Old Testament in the process of God saying, let there be. And God said, let there be light. God said, let there be plants and animals. God said, let there be creatures in our image and likeness, which are human beings. But the point that the scripture is demonstrating there is that this act of creation by the divine was a mental act, an act of will and volition. And we don't imagine that that whatever our concept of the divine is, whatever our concept of God is, it's not a big person. It's not an old man with a white beard sitting on a throne up in the sky. It is spirit. It is without form, but it is all form, and it's the great mystery that we were told about. So it doesn't have vocal cords and air and lungs and those sorts of things that we experience here in our human life on this planet. So its act of speaking, of saying let there be, is not a vocal act like you and I understand, but it is a movement of thought, a movement of mind upon itself, which we call thought. Which, by the way, Frederick Bales tells us that thought is the only energy in the universe that is not created through some mechanical means. Think about that. Electricity comes through us through steam, through mechanical engines, all those things. But what is the power of thought? Where does it come from? One could argue that when we think, there's little things that fire in our brain that they can monitor on electrodes. But are they the cause, or are they the effect of our thinking? And I believe if you dwell upon it, you'll realize that they must be the effect. Because if I ask you to think something, and then that part of the brain that's associated with that thinking lights up, your desire to think that certain way caused it to light up. So we have this thing, this pure energy, this all-powerful, all-knowing intelligence, the thing itself, and it creates by an act of will and volition. And there's some part of itself, not something separate from itself, not something even that it created, but some part of itself that acts as the doer of the word. We might call this in traditional theology the Holy Spirit, the doer of the word. We call it the law of mind. Something took that word, something. When Spirit said, let there be plants and animals of every kind, something took that word and made it so. And that's what we refer to in our teaching as the law of mind. Mind with a capital M. And since it has created each and every one of us out of itself, not separated from, not apart from, not different than, but actually unique, individualized expressions of itself, as a wave might be considered to be an individualized expression of the ocean, but not separate from the ocean, not different from the ocean, just the ocean expressing itself as a wave, or as Osho says, the ocean waving at us. We come to realize that each and every one of us is created out of that thing. It had nothing else to create out of. So our very existence and our very lives must partake of the nature of that which has created us, as much as a wave must partake of the nature of the ocean. It's obvious that a wave is not the entire ocean, but whatever the wave is part of that ocean. And you and I are not all that God is, and we never will be. But all that we are is some part of God. And that's what we're going to talk about today. How much of the divine can express through us and as us? It is done unto us according to our belief. That is the way that the New Testament talks about the law of mind. It is done unto you according to your belief. You may remember there was an example, a parable in the New Testament of a centurion who came to Jesus, and someone in his household was sick. I don't remember whether it was his son or his servant. And he told Jesus, he said, this person's sick, can you do something for me? And Jesus said, well, I'll come with you right now. And the man said, no, you don't need to come with me. He says, I understand how power and authority works. He says, all you have to do is say the word, and it'll be taken care of. And that was an example, right? It was a teaching story for us. And the way Jesus responded was, I haven't seen faith like this in all of Palestine, in all of the people I've talked to. Done unto him according to his belief. It was done unto him according to his belief. The Old Testament tells us, as you think and believe in your heart, so are you. Buddhism tells us that everything you experience is a result of what you have thought. The Stoic philosophers told us that what the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve. And of course, Ernest Holmes came and told it to us a little bit simpler. He said, change your thinking, change your life. So what we come to realize then is that this power that created the universe out of itself responds to us, acts through us, not just once in a while, but all the time. It's like gravity, right? Gravity doesn't work from 9 to 5 and then stops working later in the day. This power, this law of mind that we talk about is always responding to us exactly according to our belief. Always responding to us exactly according to our belief. Whether we are aware of it or not, whether we are consciously choosing what we believe or not, it is always responding to us exactly according to our belief. And it doesn't judge us. It doesn't say, well, you believe in health, and I will give you health. But when you believe in sickness, I won't work for you. It doesn't do that. If we believe in sickness, we are directing the power to demonstrate sickness. If we believe in health, we are demonstrating it. We are directing it to demonstrate health. If we believe in prosperity and abundance, if we believe that there's more than enough of this substance of the universe to come into form to fill every human need on this planet, and that no person or persons can possibly dam that up and stop that, the immutableness of God comes into expression as enough and plenty, then we are directing that power to demonstrate its presence and its activity by doing so. If we believe in lack and limitation, there's not enough to go around, somehow what there is has been bottled up by a few people, well then we will get to direct the law to do that as well. So I kind of go back and reiterate that point, because we really have to get our minds around that. We really have to come into the realization that there is a power in the universe that not only does, but is responding to us according to our belief, and it is doing it all the time. Remember last week, Dr. Holmes said if we were out in an ocean, and just kind of get to visual, you're out in the middle of an ocean and you're on a boat, and I'll let you decide what kind of boat it is. It could be a sailboat, it could be a large motor yacht, you decide, but you're out in the middle of the ocean and you're in this boat, and it's very comfortable and it's very peaceful, and you are surrounded in the waters by icebergs that are constantly taking form and constantly giving up form. And the form that they take is a reflection of your belief. So if you believe in beauty and peace and harmony, an iceberg appears that believes in beauty and peace and harmony. And if you suddenly change, if your mind meanders and your mind suddenly goes over now and starts to believe in disharmony, in fear, in anger, then that iceberg that represented beauty and harmony and peace dissolves, and another one takes its place. And in its place we have fear, we have anger, we have hostility. If we believe 1 minute in abundance, the iceberg takes the form of symbols of abundance in our life. And if we quickly change our thoughts and change our beliefs over to lack and limitation, the iceberg that looked like abundance dissolves, and one takes its place that looks like lack and limitation. The law is constantly responding to us according to our belief, whether we are choosing wisely what we will believe or not. Another example I thought of, if you've ever seen how they do a recorded puppet show like the Muppets, it's very interesting technically. You're familiar with the green screen effect, chroma key in television, right? If you've ever seen the weather people on TV, you know what I'm talking about. They're really standing, and that big weather map behind them is not there. It's a computer-generated graphic. What is behind them is a big green screen. And the video processors in the studio, what they're capable of doing is taking that green out and replacing it with the graphic, whatever graphic that they want to put on, have it appear as if it was behind the weather person. So if it's the highs and lows or the temperatures or whatever's appearing, whatever the weather person is turning around and pointing to, they're really pointing to a green screen. But you get to see it as if they were pointing at that map. Well, the way that they do some of these Muppet shows is the puppeteers are all dressed in green. So there's a human being there, they're all dressed in green, and they might have their hand up in this puppet, or they might have their hands above the puppet manipulating the controls. But the video processor removes the green, replaces it with a different image, and when we see the show, we don't see the puppeteer, we don't see them there. So imagine then that you are surrounded by this room full of people who are dressed in these green costumes. It looks like a ninja costume, the hood and everything. And they are ready, willing, and able to do whatever it is that you want them to do for you, that you believe that they will do for you. So you start to believe that God is perfect health, and this perfect health is now demonstrating its presence in your life, in your body. And all of these people in their little green costumes, they start moving towards you, they start taking steps toward you in order to demonstrate this perfect health in your life. For the purpose of illustration, they are bringing the perfect health to you. And then the very next second what you do is you turn your mind meanders. And you start to think about all the sickness in the world. You start to think about the sickness in your family, or you start to think about the sickness in your own experience, or you start to think about your aches and your pains. And all of these people who are moving towards you, they now turn and they start going in the other direction. So the very good that you were trying to demonstrate in your life just a few seconds ago or a few minutes ago, you are now repelling. And now you change your thought. You suddenly go off and you start to think about politics and the presidential election and all of these different candidates and who the best one is and who the worst one is, and you get caught up in all of that drama that we see on television. And now all of these people in their little green costumes are moving in different directions, scattered about, reflecting your scattered thinking, your scattered belief. And we want to keep a visual, whether it be the icebergs or whether it be the people coming to us and moving about. We want to keep that in mind because it helps us to remember that if we wish to have a different experience in our life, we must change our mind and keep it changed. Change our mind and keep it changed. Emmett Fox tells us that. So it's not enough to just, for 5 minutes in the morning and 5 minutes in the evening, to say to ourselves, God is good, and God is right where I am, and God is perfect health and perfect peace and perfect love. All of that's true. But if the very next thing we do after thinking that is to turn on the TV and think about how terrible the world is, or to jump in our car and think about all of the problems with the traffic flow and drivers and all those kind of things, we are basically undoing what we just did a few minutes ago. We are dissolving the iceberg that represented what we want, and we are replacing it with an iceberg that represents what we don't want. We have taken the people who were moving towards us to help demonstrate our good in our lives, and we have sent them off into a different direction. And that's why the title of the talk is The Meandering Mind. The Meandering Mind. Osho wrote a huge book on meditation. I mean, it's got to be like 1,000 to 1,500 pages. And I have a copy that I've been working through for about 15 years now, maybe longer, maybe 20. And I've just basically touched the surface of this thing. And in it, he gives the example of our mind is like a stray dog, and it just wanders here and there. If you've ever had a dog that gets out of the yard, and I love little meme on Facebook. It says, "Live your life like somebody left a gate open." We had a couple dogs that, if that gate was open for a nanosecond, boom, they were out, and you'd go out and you'd be calling them, and of course they can't hear you when they're trying to get away. They can't hear you. Crinkle a bag of potato chips, they'll be right at your feet. But when they're trying to escape, it's like, I can't hear you, I can't see you, and they always just stay just like 2 steps away from you, so you can't get to them and get that leash on. And it's amazing to watch them wander and meander. We had hounds, we had basset hounds, and of course they've got a great sense of smell. So after a while I figured out that if I wanted to catch them, all I had to do is figure out which way the wind was blowing and go upwind of them, and they would come to me. Because they were following the smells. They would just meander, and if somebody was barbecuing outside, ooh, they would head that way. If there was a stinky trash can out by the curb, ooh, they would go that way. They would just kind of meander all over the place. So Osho tells us that our mind is like a stray dog. It just wanders willy-nilly. It just goes about here and there. And we follow it. See, we, whoever we are, whatever we are, the I that we think we are, we follow the thoughts. So 1 minute thoughts are passing through us, and they are thoughts of love and joy and peace, and we follow them. Ooh, that's great. And the next minute, thoughts of anger and fear and lack and limitation and drama and all this human stuff that we see on the news passes through our mind, and we start to follow that. We get entangled with it. And what we have to learn how to do is to let the thoughts come and let the thoughts go. We have to learn how to think in order to learn how to live. We have to detach and disidentify with the thought. What I mean by that is sometimes Sometimes an angry thought arises and we think to ourselves, I'm angry. I'm upset about that. You know, we get caught up in it and we get entangled. But there's another way of reacting. There's another way of responding. And that is to simply observe the angry thought. There goes an angry thought. But I don't have to get angry. I don't have to become entangled with it. I don't have to play out all of the drama in consciousness. Well, that person made me angry and this is what I need to do and tell them all. You know, no, don't need to do any of that. Look, there goes an angry thought. That's all. There goes an angry thought. So this is why meditation is such an important spiritual practice. It helps us to become the witnesses of our own thoughts. It helps us to recognize when our thoughts are going in the direction we want them to go. And it helps us to change the direction if we have become entangled with a thought that is going in a direction we don't want it to go. The word disciple was basically a student, one who was in training. And discipline means training. It means learning. And in the New Testament, we are given the example many times of the shepherd and the sheep. The shepherd and the sheep. So the shepherd, you might remember at Christmas, I said the shepherd was one who watched over his thoughts. The shepherds in the Christmas story represented the people who watched over their thoughts. But you remember the shepherd had a staff, and then he had a crook. You know, he had a stick that had kind of like a hook on the end of it. And what that hook was for is if the little sheep got too far away or if they fell into a gully or something, the shepherd could reach down with that hook and could bring the little one back into the flock, back into the safety of where the shepherd with the staff could ward off any attacks. If any wild animals were to try to attack a sheep, that's what the staff was for. So if you think that you have a tough day at work, can you imagine what it's like beating off a bear with a stick? Right? Just kind of make things a little bit easier for you tomorrow when you go to work. So we want to think of our thoughts as these little sheep. They tend to wander. And the good shepherd, the loving shepherd, just gently nudges them back. When they get off track, he just nudges them back. No anger, no yelling, just nudges them back. Come on back. Come on back, we're going this way. Come on back, come on back. And when we learn how to meditate, we learn that we can do that as well. That we can become aware of the fact that our mind has wandered, and we can just gently bring it back. This is the whole technique that we teach of learning to inhale and count 1, and exhale and inhale and count 2, and go 1 to 5, and just go back and do 1 to 5 again, and then when you hit 5, go back to 1. And see if you can do that for 20 or 30 minutes without losing count. Without losing count. Thoughts may be going around in the background. You can observe that thoughts are going in the background. But when you become entangled with one, you'll lose count. Your mind will engage a thought and you will follow that train of thought. And all of a sudden you say, well, wait a second, I was meditating and I don't remember where I am. Gently, go back to 1. Start all over again. No judgment, no criticism, back to 1. So simply what we're doing is training our mind to keep our mind on whatever it is that we want. Single point meditation, that is called. And this is so important because if we go back and read this chapter, what it does, if we wanted to sum up what Ernest Holmes tells us in this chapter, it is that we are surrounded by and immersed in and saturated with an intelligence that is ready, willing, and able to do for us whatever it can do through us. But it can only do through us that which we accept, that which we receive, that which we consciously choose to let into our mind. So think about air. Think about the air we breathe. Right? There is more than enough air present in the atmosphere on this planet right now than you and I could ever possibly need in our lifetime. But if we hold our breath, it does us no good. We have to accept. We have to accept. Now the interesting thing is that the desire to breathe is something that we did not create, you and I. It was placed within us before we were born. When our little bodies were growing in our mother's womb, our lungs were moving in and out, and they were breathing in and out, but not air. They were breathing the fluid. They were breathing fluid in and out to develop the strength that they needed. See, the divine love had the air waiting for us, and it had the desire to breathe instilled within us. And as we were born, as our little bodies passed through the birth canal, all of that fluid was pushed out of our lungs. So that when we came into this world, our lungs naturally expanded and we accepted the good that was there. Now there are certain things that we have, the way that we have been created, there are certain things that we don't need to consciously cooperate with. They are programmed into us. Right? Life has programmed into us that which we need to exist to survive. But there comes a point in our growth, in our evolution, where any further progress requires a conscious, deliberate cooperation. Thomas Troward referred to this as the fifth kingdom, the spiritual kingdom. Evolution has taken life on this planet, from the mineral to the vegetable, to the animal, to the human. But if we wish to become more, if we wish to reach our greatest potential, which is the awareness of the presence and the activity of God within us, we must cooperate at the level of the spiritual. And as I said earlier, the activity of the spirit is mental. We must learn how to think. We must learn how to live. We must learn how to discipline, not punish, but discipline the meandering mind to keep it on the things we want and off the things we don't. So I invite you to consider this. What is the most important thing in life? What is the most important thing in your life? What is the most important thing you will ever discover? And I suggest that that is the contact with the divine. The awareness through realization, not just through an intellectual aha, but the actual experience of the presence of the divine, the mystical experience, the bliss that the saints talk about, the fusion of the moth and the flame is the way that Rumi puts it. But the actual experience of the presence of the divine, I believe, is the ultimate ideal, if we want to consider that, the greatest that we can think of. And if that is the case, it doesn't have to be, there may be something else that we would rather work with right now than that, and that's fine. But what we have to recognize is that if we can keep our mind, and I'm not talking about our willpower, I'm talking about our thoughts and our beliefs, if we can keep our mind around what it is that we wish to experience, that we are creating the mold into which the undifferentiated substance of the universe pours and then creates that experience in our life. If you've ever been into into a bakery where they make different kinds of birthday cakes, you know, you can look up and they have the different molds up there, the different pans. Some of them might look like a teddy bear, some of them might look like a clown, some might look like a little dog, some may look like a little cat. But you know, you take that pan and then you pour the cake batter into it and you put it in the oven, and then when the cake comes out, it takes the shape of whatever that mold was. Well, Dr. Holmes in this chapter tells us to consider the fact that through your thoughts, through your belief, through whatever it is that you have put your faith in, you are constantly creating that mold. And then the impersonal law of the universe, the law of mind that does it to us according to our belief, pours the undifferentiated stuff and substance of the universe into that mold and creates within our lives the circumstances that are exactly according to the mental equivalent that we have provided for us. So we have to ask ourselves, well, how do I do this? You know, I said meditation is a great spiritual practice to help us become aware of our thoughts and to become aware of the fact that we can discipline our thoughts, we can bring them back if they're wandering off, we can nudge them in the other direction. We can say, hey, I don't want to go that way. What am I going that way for? I don't want to go that way. I want to go this way. Let's go this way instead. And what Dr. Holmes tells us is so wonderful. We can use the law of mind to help us do whatever it is that we want to do. So great art is brought into creation in this world by people who believe that they can do great art. They can create great art. That when we believe that we can do something, when we have the attitude, the mental attitude that it can be done and there is a power in the universe that is helping us to do it, then that power works with us. Great inventions, great science, great movies, great novels, great music. All of these things come into the world because somebody has set their mind to allowing themselves to be the channel, the instrument through which God plays, the instrument through which this good comes into the world. And if it is more faith that we wish to have, we can set our mind to believing that all of the faith that there is, right? God can never doubt. That's the ultimate of faith, no doubt. Ernest Holmes tells us that faith is a knowing so certain that the opposite cannot appear in the mind. Well, God cannot know the opposite. God can know, but God cannot know the opposite. So all of the faith of the universe, the faith of God, and Ernest tells us this elsewhere in the book, we don't want to have faith in God, we want to have the faith of God. All of the faith of God that knows and knows that it knows and knows that it can be done and knows that it is doing it, all of that faith is right here where we are. And if we will bring ourselves to believing that that power is now working to us and through us and as us and for us, to eliminate everything that is unlike itself, then our faith will be strengthened. This is a very key point. I want you to really keep this in mind. What happens many times when I'm working with students or I'm working with somebody in counseling is they think, well, if I'm not experiencing everything in life that I want to experience, and if everything you're telling me about the law is true, then there must be something in my consciousness that doesn't believe. And therefore I need to go in, kind of a psychoanalysis view. I need to go in somehow, and I need to, excuse me, I need to find whatever it is that put those crazy ideas in my head. And I need to bring them up, and I need to look at them, and I need to somehow get rid of them. Very rarely is that ever necessary. Very rarely is it ever necessary, or is it even possible? Dr. Holmes tells us that we're so complicated, we'll never go back and find one thing. We always want that one thing. Well, gee, I've never been able to hold a job. What is the one idea in my life that's keeping me from doing it? It's probably not one idea. It's probably a combination of several different ones. So what we need to remember is that by keeping our thoughts and our beliefs focused on the idea that the power that created the universe it does the work. It is doing whatever needs to be done to make whatever change or changes as needs must be in consciousness. We don't have to go in there and kind of sort ideas out one at a time. Okay? The example Dr. Holmes gives us is if you go in a room and it's dark, you can turn on the light, in which case the darkness immediately disappears. Or you can stand there and say, I wonder who left the light out. I wonder why they didn't turn the light on. I wonder who the last person in this room was. I wonder if the power bill has been paid. You can sit there and you can try to figure it out forever. Or you can just turn on the switch and let the light do what the light does best, which is to dispel the darkness. See, the darkness does not have a power of its own. The darkness is merely the absence of light. So as soon as the light comes on, that which appeared to be darkness is gone. It was not a thing of itself. It could not resist. It could not struggle. It was just a consequence of the light being blocked. Whatever thoughts, emotions, ideas that may have in the past been serving to impair our awareness, our perception of the goodness and the greatness and the activity of God are like the darkness. They're just ignorance. They're just false ideas. We don't have to go in there and dig and try to figure out where we got them, who gave them to us. Was it my second grade teacher when she said this? Is that the reason I think that way? No, we don't have to do that. We just keep our mind focused on the fact that the omnipotence of God, the omniscience of God surrounds me, permeates me, saturates me, and is right now working through me, as me, and for me to demonstrate its activity in my life as a greater desire to know God, as a greater experience of the presence of God, as a greater degree of health and prosperity and love and fulfillment, greater degree of spiritual attunement, whatever areas of our life we are working on. We have to know that all of God is for us and none of God is against us. And what we want to do is, as I suggested last week, get yourself an app that you can put on your phone or some type of a fitness watch or something that gives you a reminder every so often, every 15 minutes, every 30 minutes, whatever it might be. And when that little reminder buzzer goes off, ask yourself, what have I been thinking since the last time it went off? Where has my mind meandered? Have I meandered to the dark side of believing in lack and limitation and evil and wickedness and all of those things? Or has my mind been stayed on Thee, on the goodness, on the greatness, on the love? And whether your mind has wandered or not, take that opportunity. And you can do it very quickly. Take a couple seconds to do all this. Just remind yourself very quickly that the immutableness of divine love is right now working through you to keep your mind stayed on God. The divine mind has created us out of itself to express and to experience its life as us. It had to leave us alone to make that discovery. And during this time that we were out wandering, we adopted these ideas, these beliefs of the knowledge of good and the knowledge of evil. And now it is time to let go of that. There is no good. There is no evil. There just is. There just is. There just is God. And we recognize that this requires, it demands our conscious cooperation. We have no choice. We cannot escape the power of the law of mind any more than we can escape gravity. The law is responding to us according to our belief, whether we like it or not. The only sensible thing to do is to bring our mind back from wherever it has meandered and bring it to a point where we believe in the love. We believe in the peace. We believe in the power. We believe in the presence and the activity of the divine right where we are, and we believe that it reveals itself to us in a manner we are perfectly capable of experiencing, of feeling, of knowing, and of loving. What it does is it appears in our life to us exactly according to our degree of acceptance. Through our practice of reining in our meandering minds, we provide a greater avenue, a greater opportunity for God's love to show up as us. I believe it is for this purpose that we have been created. So we might as well get on with the task at hand. Change your mind, keep it changed. Change your thinking, change your life. Keep our minds stayed on the one divine presence, all about and all within. And so it is.